Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today to attend this press point on consensus. As you know, we signed this very important document today, and we thought it would be a very good opportunity for you to hear from some protagonists, some representatives of the institutions that today signed the consensus, to have some explanations, some comments, followed by your questions. We will not have a lot of time, so I will just start by presenting you our speakers today. So here we have Mr. Fernando Jesús García Casas, the Secretary of State for International Cooperation and for Iberoamerica of Spain, in representation of the Council. We have Mr. Norbert Neuser, member of the European Parliament from the Socialist and Democrats group. And we have Commissioner Neven Mimica, Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development. So I will just start opening the floor with Mr. Neuser. Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this conference. I was one of the two co-rapporteurs. We are still waiting for Bogdan Venta from the EPP. We too, I think we made really a good job because representing two big parties, it was not so easy to come together and to find a new consensus or to find a consensus on a new consensus. We had a strong position coming from the parliament, and we as parliamentarians had to defend this position. This, of course, was not so easy because the Commission have some other issues, some other ideas, some other goals, and especially the member states made us in the negotiations a lot of problems. But together we solved, and I want to, in the beginning, thank very much the Maltese presidency. They did really a great job. They had a kind of diplomatic, it worked. And I want also to thank the Commission. Sometimes it was not so easy to come together, but in the end we had, I think, a good solution. Some people often say the glass is half full or half empty, but I would say it's much more than half full. So in the end, we could agree these compromises. You know, it's necessary after more than 10 years to come to a new consensus because we have new challenges. Just to mention two very important ones. One is migration and the other is climate change. Both issues not covered under the old consensus. So it was necessary to come up with more ideas how to tackle these issues. In the middle of the consensus is still the fight against poverty. I think this is the most important thing we have to underline all the time. And then beside this, we were looking how to organize this fight against poverty better. So that was the reason we were looking for a solution to have the member states and the European Union more engaged in the 0.7 target. You know that the member states are very strong. It's their budget. But nevertheless, I think we came out with a solution saying we are looking for the time until 2030 that we together can reach this goal. Of course, we had to involve the Sustainable Development Goals coming from 2015. This is included in the consensus. We were looking for some financial tools to have improvements in the developing policy. And then the, I would say, very hard point was migration. So the consensus comes to a result saying migration is not only or not negative, but also we have a lot of positive elements, and so we have to use and to underline these elements also. Member states made some trouble in the end because they said it's in their national competence to be active in migration. So we have to look in the future, because this is on the framework now, in the future how to tackle this point and to convince the member states being more and better engaged in migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now, in representation of the Council, I would like to give the floor to Mr. García Casas.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I wouldn't say that I'm a guest of honor, not at all, but I'm a very honored guest here, because not being from the Maltese presidency, I'm very proud to represent the Maltese presidency and all the member states. They did a wonderful job in a very difficult moment, and they did a wonderful job. I believe this European consensus of development is the best answer we can provide to the 5 Ps. To the people, planet, peace, prosperity, and partnership that we could reach. And it was, and I have to commend the people here in Brussels, of the Commission, the Council of our member states, and also at headquarters. It was it took us quite a compromise, quite an engagement. Sometimes it's much easier to disagree than to agree. So to agree has the additional virtue of compromise on the common values. So I would say that it's not only for the Commission and the European Union institutions, but it's for all our member countries. And it was hard to the very last minute, but we succeeded. And I believe we have ahead of us in these 123 points a truly shared vision of the framework for actions and of the things we want to do in development cooperation. And at the time when Europe faces challenges such as terrorism, migration, populism, things like this, this is the best that we can provide, and somehow we can engage with international society. This is a support for multilateralism. This is support for the core of the United Nations in our system, and this is support for a rules-based system. The international community, the European Union wants to belong to and to make part of it, and not without skepticism at all. It will also has a very clear reflection on our national plans. It's not only for the European institutions, the European Union, it will also have a great influences in the development of our national plans for cooperation. We are all together, and we know that by 2030, when we said that we have to set the goal of the 0.7%, we will somehow contribute to the implementation of Agenda 2030. There is a more coordinated approach with the joint programming of our assistance and the joint programming of our actions in the ground. 20 years ago, this would have been totally inconceivable. This is a real change of paradigm. And like this, we share resources, capacities, and expertise. We have different regions in which we have a special capacity, the different member countries, and in different levels of budgets and human resources possibilities. This is getting it closer. And like this, we will avoid overlapping. Overlapping is also a problem in international organizations, and will maximize our impact on our developing countries. The idea of partnership, the idea of equals that cooperate with each other is very important, and somehow is behind all these 123 points. These stronger partnerships will project us into the future with Asian, African, Latin American countries, and with better tailored forms of cooperation. As it was said here, we have to fight poverty, but it's not only the poor and the most underdeveloped countries. We also have to support these more developed countries where huge bags of poverty and inequality still remain. So different partnerships, different ways of treating it. And so I believe we have a very, very useful, very productive working instrument, and the only thing I have to say that we have to put it to effect with the good guidance of the Commission, of the Council, and the national authorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have the pleasure to have here among us also Mr. Bogdan Brun-Venta, member of the European Parliament and also co-rapporteur of this document. So I would like to give the floor to him. Please.
First of all, I would like to apologize, but sometimes our obligation here, not only during European Development Days, but also the European Parliament, and that is something what's happened, and I recognize also to my mistake. Sorry for that. But to back to our new European consensus, of course, I work closely with European Commission, with Council, but especially with my colleagues Norbert Neuser, and we know that that this new consensus come now in a really special time for us, because since 2006, the previous consensus show us maybe the good routes, the good way, but now we are know that we have new challenges, and the situation has really changed considerable. That is why show us also to new possibilities, and I think we have also to new instrument to work on this as a new tools to work on this and to prepare better world for all for us. And the new consensus will constitute as a crucial implementation tool for 2030 agenda, as today we heard during the presentation before, and of course for sustainable development. The agenda 2030 and of course 17 sustainable development goals are important also for us as a European Parliament, as for our work, and because they work up in the build up in the Millennium Development Goals, and of course what is most important, that is the special efforts to meet the needs of the world's poorest. And what's more, we know here this message, the special message, this 2030 agenda, and of course European consensus is constructed around these 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace and partnership. And of course we will maintain this important rule and message, what is the European Union, because we, with new European consensus and this joint political statement for not only from three institutions but also for the member states, and for prepare us for revise the EU external cooperation framework, because EU is biggest or the leader in a global fight and the global implementation effort for development help. And the new consensus will really define the priorities for how we should really eradicate poverty, and of course that the way so that we should never so that no one is forgotten. And of course what is most important, we stay here in Brussels during the development days, and I think combating inequalities and many other challenges related to demographic, economic and social and environmental issues are important for all of us here. That's from my side. Thank you very much, and once again I would apologize to be late here during this press conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Neven Mimica, our Commissioner, European Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development. Please.
Yes, thank you. Very good afternoon to everyone. Actually, I would like just to concentrate on the major features and the major differences in the way we do development that come with this new European consensus for development. For us, this consensus marks a step change in the way we do development. It fully integrates the economic, social, and environmental dimension of sustainable development, and this is the core value, the core beauty of this new consensus, taking together economic, social, and environmental dimensions. Because if you look back at the Millennium Development Goals, let us say the structure, the setup there was more or less simple: more growth, less poverty, regardless what the growth would influence in terms of social structures, social tissue, or environmental protection. Now we have all of them together. Eradicating poverty is at the forefront of our development goals, but at the same time taking care of the economic growth, of the social inclusiveness, and of the environmental protection and environmental dimension. Because we have to answer the key question now that is different. The key question now is not, do we have enough growth? The key question is this growth, economic growth, is it sustainable enough? Is it inclusive enough? This is the answer that we have to give by implementing the new consensus on development. This consensus also underlines the links between development and other policies, including peace and security policy, including humanitarian aid, migration, environment and climate change, because we have to make sure that they systematically are taken into account when dealing with development concerns. So the links, interconnection between development and peace and security, development and humanitarian, development and migration, development and environment and climate is there and will be there much more present than ever before. So we do things differently. We do not concentrate only on each individual sector of traditional cooperation. Instead, we look at a bigger picture. The consensus highlights the important cross-cutting elements, such as youth, gender equality, empowerment of women, mobility, migration, also sustainable energy, climate change, investments, trade, good governance, democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. All of them are for us cross-cutting drivers of development that are present and should be taken into account when dealing with each and every sector where we go with our development projects. The reason we choose to take this approach is that sustainable development goals are interlinked, are indivisible, and so will be our action to address them. By focusing on these transformative elements, we can meet multiple goals in coherent way. Our consensus also takes a comprehensive approach to implementation, combining aid with other resources, with sound policies as well, and a strengthened approach to policy coherence for development. We shall bring all our policies working for development as close as possible and much closer than ever before, much coherent than ever before. We will use our official assistance, our ODA capacity, our grant capacity, our public money. We shall use it as a catalyst to mobilize additional resources. A part of the ODA will be used to catalyze, to mobilize, to leverage additional resources, including from the private sector. Through a new European external investment plan, we are aiming to generate up to 44 or double than that, 44 billion euros of private and public investments in development, or double than that if other stakeholders participate equally in this external investment plan. This morning I spoke at the EU-Africa Business Forum with exactly this message. We need the private sector to get fully on board of development cooperation. All these elements combined constitute a framework for European development policy, more comprehensive than ever before. But let me be clear, these are challenging times. The global commitment to some of sustainable development and to some, or actually to all of the sustainable development goals, to climate action, to solidarity, this seems to be wavering globally. At this time, the significance of this new European consensus on development becomes much bigger than the sum of its part because of this global questioning of the climate actions, even of the sustainable development goals. Today, together with the European Parliament, with our member states, we have shown that we are ready to step up to our responsibility, to our global responsibility, as the biggest development actor, as the largest development actor in the world. We are more than 60% of the overall official provider of the overall development assistance, official development assistance. So, therefore, we have the responsibility to help keep global efforts on the right track, and we shall do so. Regardless, we shall fly high in our leadership role in the international development, in sustainable development action, regardless how low or how high others would go. So, and therefore, we are putting our word, our dignity, our future first. This is the way we shall do the development, sustainable development cooperation differently under the new consensus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think we can have some questions, so I open the floor to you. Please let us know your name and the media you represent, please.
Hi, I'm Nicolás Eliades from El Espectador of Colombia. I liked very much the last sentence you said, because it brings me directly to my question, putting the world first as opposed to America first. Do you see a role for the European Union in the vacuum that perhaps Donald Trump's policies are leaving, and especially in light of this consensus, to take up the leadership of cooperation and development and the fight against climate change, and change perhaps the direction that the European Union might have been perceived to be going towards irrelevance perhaps a few years ago, especially in light of Brexit and stuff like that?
Well, I would say that European Union has been and shall be the leader, the global leader, the most important global actor in the development policy in the world. And we shall, under this consensus, we shall even strengthen this role and strengthen our responsibility that comes with such a leadership role in international development. The same goes for climate action. We have been there in the front lines, at the front lines of making the Paris Climate Agreement ambitious one, of making it legally binding, or of making it very much contributional to the needs of saving and preserving our planet. So, and we shall continue to be ambitious and to keep the Sustainable Development Goals agenda on track, and to keep the Paris Agreement on track. We are the largest global actor in development and climate action, but we are not the only one. We cannot do everything alone. Therefore, the partnerships are important. Partnerships in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, and the partnerships in the implementation of the climate action arrangement. These partnerships for us, they are not new for us. We cooperate very much with a number of international providers of official development assistance, the US included. We are strategic partners in the implementation of many aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we would like to see this partnership grow and continue in the future. Lowering, maybe when it comes to sustainable development, maybe we shall face the situation where the US contribution, financial contribution to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals might decrease. But for us, this won't be the reason to leave aside the partnership that we would like to keep with the US. So we look forward to common actions in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we look forward to forge even stronger partnerships when it comes to climate action with all of other partners that in the world that could in a way let us say take the best strengths out of a common efforts to implement the climate arrangements, regardless of the fact of the deploring fact of the regrettable fact that the US has withdrawn from the legal, or is going to question and to withdraw from the legal commitments of the climate change arrangements.
Thank you, Commissioner. More questions? What I would propose, if we can group the questions, and then we'll have a grouped answer. So.
This is a question for Mr. García Casas. Carlos Navarro from Radio Nacional de España. He tells us about a hard negotiation and to reach this agreement. Can you tell us more? And how from now will change the way or the strategy for every state member in cooperation in the future? Will change?
Hello, Anna Leach from The Guardian. You said that you were going to work with private sector to mobilise more resources. Will you have any requirements on those private sector companies so that they're not impacting development in a negative way, impacting climate change, making sure that there's labour rights and no sort of land grabs and other sort of negative impacts that private sector companies can have?
Well, thank you. Well, I would say that it took some effort during these almost 6 months. We have been discussing it through January because we are north and south as countries of Europe, or Central Europe. There was also some nuances. Some of us are more present, let's say, in Latin America or in Africa, some others in Asia. So it took quite a lot of balance of putting together of all of our values. But in the end, the compromise and the agreement was fully accepted by all. And I would say that maybe since I'm somehow trying to represent here the Maltese presidency, Malta is a maritime country. And we learned from this consensus 2 things: how to navigate in convoy, the 28 member countries, and how to navigate the governments, the NGOs, the civil society, the private sector. No, it was like a big coalition for this, and I hope that we will continue navigating properly. It took some effort, but it takes also some effort to build a ship, but we have already it.
To the question concerning the private sector, of course, I think we know that we need a lot of investment in the African countries, and perhaps in the past the private sector was not enough engaged. That has different reasons. One reason is stability in a lot of countries, and another point is that we as Europeans have to follow our values. When it comes to private investment. So we have to look under which conditions private investment and private engagement will be organized so that they follow social standards, environmental standards. It's important to have a look on this. But overall, it's necessary to have more private investment.
And once more, maybe to look for more possibility also to how to find this solution, really physically, it should really work. But also to back to this climate change, what we have now with the consensus, also for European side, we send a message. We are all agree with this. We have now the situation that someone, took the decision to go out from this COP21, but all the rest of the world will stay together, and that shows us also the possibility. I think this time is this important rule for a consensus, not only because we voted last week in the European Parliament, was really important for us. So send this message. What is really climate change? And once again, I have information from different American big cities, for example, organization for the presidents or mayors for these cities. They started to implement it COP21. It means what say the president now is the same what the whole country think sometimes, because during also to Habitat Free with this also to really implement it with also our work with consensus. Big urban communities, big cities of the world, they play also the important role. And if we will never talk about the climate change, also the implementation from private sector in this, we will never resolve such problems. If you talk about for example, I visited in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, and we talked with European ambassador over there. And the last 3 years, the people practically, this city is growing 300,000 people. Also to such migrants or seasonal workers, and how we should resolve this without such also to connection across the private sector will be difficult. But never forget, climate change is really exactly what's happened. And if somebody took such a decision, it means not we are all agree with this. Thank you.
Dagmar Dehmer of the Tagesspiegel in Berlin. Commissioner, you stressed the SDGs as a leading and guiding inspiration for that new consensus. I wonder if from the development angle, you maybe want to propose that the EU should take the SDGs as part of the EU sustainability strategy too. I mean, the strategy really reads like very old when you look at it, and the SDGs don't play any role in it. So might that be a starting point for that discussion in the EU too? I mean, the EU has to become more sustainable and fulfill these promises itself too.
Yes, indeed. Our consensus, new European consensus on development, is our external response to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, how we shall cooperate in assisting others to meet Sustainable Development Goals. But Sustainable Development Goals are universal. They matter also in Europe, for us as well, in the European Union. Therefore, the European Commission is also doing, let us say, internal, in-house work and analysis and the program. There is a communication underway on the sustainable future of Europe. This is kind of a guiding document that would address the way how the European Union will implement the Sustainable Development Goals at home, in the member states, in the European Union. This is important document because it goes beyond the existing Europe 2020 document, which is let us say, growth strategy. And whatever I said on the Millennium Development Goals could apply on the Europe 2020 strategy. It is more growth strategy, the same way, maybe not taking full account of the sustainability of that growth. Therefore, sustainability of the growth will be addressed in the new sustainable future of Europe, European plan, European document. This should go together, I would say, hand in hand, and I expect to see that hand in hand with the forthcoming public and political debate on the future of Europe in general. The white paper on that is now launched, but sustainable future of Europe should be also included in the all discussions of the on future of Europe, because there could not be future of Europe without sustainability of that future. So therefore, consensus is one part, but that is more external. Internal and external framework will be addressed in this communication on the sustainable future of Europe.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we'll have to stop here because our speakers have a lot of commitments. So we'd like to thank them. I would like to thank you. Breaking some of the rules of this seminar, we have printed a very few copies of the press release, so I can give them to you if you're interested. And bonne continuation. Merci beaucoup.